Hello, everyone. This is Muhammad Tuhami, author of Midway Simplicity, and welcome to a new episode of the Midway Decluttering Show, where you will find tips on how you can declutter your first 100 items. And my very special guest today is Mike Burns from the other side of complexity.com, an author of a great book that hit the market these days. It's called Simpler. It's a book about how to declutter your life and focus on what's most important to you. Mike, thank you very much for being my guest on the show today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. Let's start by your story of decluttering. How did you start the decluttering process and how it went out for you?
Well, several years ago, it's funny how it actually got started was my family and I, we had moved twice in 1 year period. And what we realized, we were about to move the second time, and when we started to pack, we realized that there was a lot of boxes that we never unpacked the entire time we were there. And we realized, wait a second, there's no need for us to continue moving this stuff from place to place when we're never using it in months' time. So it stayed in the same boxes, it was labeled, and we realized, okay, we need to do something about this. So in that situation, we actually just had a yard sale. We took all those boxes, dumped them out in the yard, and just sold most of that. And that kind of began the process of us asking some pretty serious questions about our stuff. You know, what do we really need? How much is it actually costing us to manage this, both in finances, our time, just the headache of sorting everything and organizing it? And so we began asking those kind of questions. I stumbled upon a book called The Power of Less by Leo Babauta in the library one day and thought, oh, that's interesting, because I'd already been convinced that less is more in many situations. So I read that and really began to connect with him. To be honest, most obviously because he did have a large family as well. He has 6 children, I have 6 children, and so it really clicked with me. He kind of earned my ear because of the life he was living, and so began to kind of consume his materials. Somehow that led me over to Joshua Becker's blog, Becoming Minimalist, and began reading that faithfully and began to try to apply some of those things. So got kind of passionate about, wow, we've got to be intentional about the stuff that we have so that we can focus on the things that are important to us. So.
That's great. And what was the biggest challenge that you faced in the beginning of your decluttering journey?
Well, probably for us, the biggest challenge was what I think is the biggest challenge for a lot of people is just that what if question. What if we're going to need this? We have a big family. We've dealt with a lot of hand-me-downs. We've got older brothers and sisters, younger ones. Seasonal changes. What if we get in a position in our life where we don't have money to repurchase this particular object? And so, over time, first of all, that first experience of the boxes helped us realize that at least on the short term, that it wasn't really likely that we were going to, be naked, not have enough clothing to wear. And we just realized that even if we got in tough situations, like using the clothing specifically, there's always yard sales, there's always thrift stores. There are emergency ways to find those kind of things if it ever got that bad, but it just hasn't. But probably just dealing with those what if questions was one of the tougher things initially.
That's great. And let me share with you some other challenges that I received from my readers. And the first one of them is that I'm overwhelmed by the too much stuff that I have. I don't know from where to start, and it seems that it's going to be an endless journey.
Sure, yeah.
Among all these clutters. So
sure.
What's your tip on that?
Well, to be honest, it's true. It is an endless journey. I mean, it's not something that you just make a decision and you say, hey, now I'm, clutter-free. My life is now simple. I flip the switch. It's done. Here I am, And to be honest, that's some of what I try to do in the book that you mentioned, is try to talk about the fact that, man, life is naturally complicated. And these tips and tools are things that we will continue to use all of our life because it is really an endless journey of constantly paying attention to what's going on in my life and what do I need to eliminate so that I can focus on those things that I had determined are most important to me. So it is that endless journey. So in the moment, that sounds nice, but what do you do when you feel that overwhelm? And I think the obvious thing to me is you just start small. You just find some small little area that you can say, okay, I can't attack the whole thing today, but I can attack this little spot right here. Maybe it's, one drawer. Maybe it's my closet. Maybe it's my countertop in the kitchen. I can look at the contents of that, and I can begin to process it, is the term that I like to use. And when I say process, I just mean take the whole pile, maybe just leave it in the pile, throw it in a box, put it in a container, something, and just start picking things up top to bottom and asking yourself, what is this? What do I need to do about it? And where does it belong? And then don't put it down until you figure out the answer to those questions.
Yeah.
And then just say, I can't handle the whole pile, but I can handle this object right now. And then as soon as I'm done with that, I can handle this next one. So, and it's amazing once you begin doing that, as you know, it gives you confidence to kind of attack other things. You start kind of getting that little bit of an adrenaline rush to be like, yes, I can do this. I can simplify my life. I'm not just a victim. So
yes,
yeah.
yes. Now let's have some philosophical talk.
Okay.
Based on what you have just said, because what you said for me is a very, very interesting perspective when you said that life is naturally complicated. Because I hear from other experts in other books that life is naturally simple, and we tend to overcomplicate things.
Sure.
So which is which? Is life naturally simple and we are guilty of complicating it, or life is naturally complex and we are trying to go against the flow of life and simplify things? So
Sure.
which is which?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't think I could absolutely answer that question. What I probably should have said is my life tends to be naturally complicated. Whether it's my fault or just the way things go, I'm not sure. But I think I say that more out of an understanding of how it tends to go. And I say it in opposition to maybe a misconception that you're just totally messed up. That's why you can't live this simple life. Because I think, or at least my experience, most of the people that I've engaged with in these conversations, they actually want to focus on important things. They want to have deep, close relationships with their loved ones and their friends. So I don't think they're motivated out of any ill intent necessarily. So do we make bad decisions that complicate those things? Sure, we do. So I think ultimately I can't answer that totally, but I do know that if I'm not intentional, the way that it goes is complication. So whether life is naturally that way or not, I know that if I don't make intentional decisions, it will tend toward complexity, if that makes more sense.
Yes, that makes perfect sense.
Okay.
And back to your advice on how to tackle the overwhelm by too much stuff. Usually most experts recommend that you take small chunks, like 10 to 15 minutes a day, and focus on one small area and then move to the next and so on. But I always hear this challenge or this fire back from people is that if I do it really small like this, I have to stay focused for a long period of time until I feel the impact of decluttering on my life. So how can I stay focused to tackle decluttering as a 2-year project or 1-year project or whatever?
Sure. Well, I think for me, I am not necessarily jazzed about simple or decluttered just for the sake of it being simple and decluttered. For me, it's more, it enables me to live the kind of life that I want to live. Does that make sense? So I'm not necessarily all pro decluttering. I'm more, anti-distraction. And so what drives me to do those things is the pain that comes from not doing it. So until the pain that comes from not doing it is more than, the pain of having the mess there, people often won't be motivated to attack it or tackle it. And so, again, because I don't see it like I'm going to take a 2-year project and accomplish this particular thing, I see it more as today, what do I need to do in my life so that I can be more focused? So it's kind of a side door way of answering your question. I think for me, we need to focus more on the passion and less on the clutter. Because if all the focus is on the clutter, then what's happening is we're actually giving prominence to stuff, which is what we're talking about, that life isn't really all about that stuff. We don't really need as much as we think we do. So I think sometimes it actually is that kind of mindset that can help people who have been struggling with, I want to do this, I've been bumping up against it, but you have to be convinced that something's got to change. And then rather than just say take small first, I would say attack the thing that's bothering you first. You know, this is something that I found. Maybe it's a pile of actual stuff. Maybe my schedule's too cluttered. I've got too much going on. Maybe I've got too many friendships I'm trying to manage, and they're all good, but I just can't manage them all. So whichever thing is actually stopping the person from going after what they're passionate about, I would say start there. So I don't know if I directly answered your question or not, but that's where my mind goes.
Yes, that's amazing. That's a great reminder to people that it's the purpose of decluttering is not decluttering. The purpose of decluttering is to create a space for what's important to you in your life.
Absolutely.
So before you start the decluttering process, you need to identify first what's your passion, what's important to you, so that when you declutter your life, you can really feel the impact that you can now practice your passion and find the space to what does really matter to you in life.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much for that insightful answer.
Thank you.
The second challenge, or the third challenge maybe, is the lack of organizational skills. So for people who are making a lot of effort to declutter their house, they still, because they don't have the organizational skills, they don't feel the effect of decluttering effort that they make, because things still seems to be decluttered or scattered everywhere.
Sure. Yeah, well, a couple of thoughts that I have. One is, when I think about organization, and it's funny because I do kind of have some natural organizational tendencies. And so whenever I put it out, when I was writing the book and I put it out to some friends and readers about, what would you like to see in here? One of my friends who knows me pretty well was like, make sure that you approach it considering those of us who it doesn't come natural to organize. And so I did. I tried really hard to approach it from that perspective, because I think it really is two separate things. When I think of organize, I think of the ability to put things in kind of systematic order that makes sense. And I think that you don't have to be necessarily organized to be able to start saying no to things, because decluttering and simplifying is actually making less need for organization. Because if I get rid of more stuff, there's less stuff that I have to put in particular orders, and less things that I have to plan for. So I would say that decluttering actually helps you if you do struggle with organization to whatever degree. But I would also push back a little bit on people who would say about themselves that they're not naturally organized, and say that organization, especially in your home life and in your schedule, it only needs to work for you. So, what may make sense for someone else, you may not think you're terribly organized because you look at your friend who, they create all these spreadsheets and, and they've got labels on everything and they can place their hands on everything. If it makes sense to you that it's somewhere in a particular stack, like I'll use an example. My wife and I are a little different on, like for me, everything has its home, right? It's always in the same place. The things in my pocket always go in the same drawer. I always go there and put them in my pocket the next day. For my wife, she's very similar, but it may be everything has maybe 3 homes, right? So there's 3 possible places it could be. She knows where it's going to be. It's in one of those 3. It works for her. There's not a good or a bad in those 2 systems, but it works for her. And so I would say to those people that you organize based on what makes sense in your life, whatever works for you to be able to accomplish your purpose. So that would be the encouragement I would give if people are struggling with those thoughts.
Awesome. So simplicity and organization is about what makes sense to you. You don't have to copy someone else. You don't have to follow the lifestyle of someone else. Just see what works for you and go do it. That's amazing.
And you can be encouraged by people who do it very differently than you. I love to read. I love to read these guys who, as we talked about, before the interview, sell everything. They just work from their iPhone in a backpack from the top of a mountain. I love to hear. I love to hear those, and it does encourage me to be able to say, hey, I can actually do more, and I can increase my focus, and I can deal with less. But there's no way on the planet that my family and I can do that exactly. And I actually, to say there's no way is probably not true. It's just not something that I would want to do even. But I'm still encouraged by them. It still teaches me, that I am capable of more than I maybe think I could. So.
Yeah. Another thing that I believe you have a great input in, since you have 6 kids and big family. I'm talking about the peer and social pressure. If I'm living in a consumer-based environment and everyone seems to be anti-simplicity, anti-minimalism, I'm trying to live that lifestyle, and I'm surrounded by people who don't understand the concept or don't appreciate it. So how to deal with them, and how to remain focused and motivated, and to keep moving in my journey?
Sure. Well, for us, in the people that know me day to day, they don't hear me using the word minimalism a lot. They don't hear me talking about simplicity as much as maybe my readers on the blog do, or people who are purchasing the book or whatever, because I'm specifically talking about those things. But it's not all that I talk about. And so for sure it's true about my family. Now, because I write about it, they know those words and that kind of thing. But I think I would say, sometimes we kind of worship the terms to a degree. And we're trying to push maybe a category on someone that they're not comfortable with, but you can be affected and see the value in what simplicity or minimalism brings without ever calling yourself a minimalist. If people were to say, "Are you a minimalist?" I would say, "Well, I don't know, maybe." It depends what your definition is, right? Some people would say I was a poser minimalist, but so I would say about that, I'm more concerned about my friends and family seeing what I'm saying yes to, rather than all the things I'm saying no to. And then if they go, "Hey, wow, you're able to do such and such that you're really passionate about. You're able to live maybe the way that you'd like to live. How are you doing that?" I say, "Well, I've got to say no to a lot of things. And here are some principles that have helped me along the way." So, practically, when it comes to like people giving you gifts or things, that's what comes up a lot in these conversations. I'm not going to like smack it out of their hand and say, "How could you? You're destroying my family." I wouldn't do that at all. We would do like everyone else does. We would thank them so much for caring enough to purchase something for our family, and we appreciate that. And we're not anti-stuff. We may take that object and go, "Hey, we're going to take this and get rid of something else," or "This is something that's valuable to us." So, to be honest, in the moment, my preference would be that our friends and family never know it's really an issue, but that they just begin to see the difference in not focusing so much on stuff. Now, having said that, I know sometimes the conversations have to come up because some people get offended because maybe they buy so much and you're getting rid of so much that they're like, "I bought you that gift and now it's gone. You sold it or gave it away." And I think that's, those are specific to those relationships. I think if I were to give advice with it, I would just say, be patient, be kind. That relationship is more important than me being able to say, "Oh no, now I have 101 objects. What am I going to say on my blog?" It's the relationships more important to me. So.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And what about the people who have like a very busy schedule, very exhausted at the end of the day when they are back from work? They have a lot of kids. How they can find time to actually do the decluttering work?
Sure.
They don't seem to find that 15 minutes that we recommend that they tackle the issue through.
Yeah, well, I think in those situations, one, the pain, if anybody should be motivated, they should, because they're feeling that pain. There's too much going on. I have no free time. Something has to give. And for me, I think a good initial step or mindset is just to stop the inflow. To be able to say, "Okay, I may not have time to sit down with a pile and start asking these questions and giving it a home, but I can start saying no more aggressively than I used to. At least I'll stop it from increasing. To be able to say no to more appointments, no to more stuff. And then again, the pain just has to drive you. And I understand that often those statements are motivated by the feelings that we have. But I highly doubt, especially if they took the 20 minutes to watch this video, that the people who are watching actually don't have 5 minutes. You know what I mean? So it really is driven more by how we feel. And again, if the pressure's off to actually have to achieve a particular status within simplicity, and it's more just, okay, this hurts, and I've got to get rid of some stuff so that it hurts less. I think we actually do have the time. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I think that that's one of the key challenges in the simplicity blogospheres that we hear a lot from other people, that you should reach this standard of living, otherwise you will be living a very cluttered life.
sure.
So there is no standard. Everyone should set his or her own standard
Sure.
and then work up to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when I talk about it, I say, we're clutter-free-ish. I mean, it's, we're on that journey. We're trying to figure this thing out. And like I said, I anticipate it being continuing. We even I'm working on a second kind of a follow-up book that deals specifically with, living clutter-free with kids in the house. And so I'm asking some people what are the types of things that they'd be interested in hearing. And again, this one is ending up being more philosophy and mindset than it is the tips, because it seems like there's a greater need for more of that, more of these kind of conversations. And it's okay to be clutter-free-ish, or minimal-ish, Again, and some people may say, oh, I'm not interested in that because, you're only saying those things, Mike, because materialism still has a grip on you. Maybe I'll come to that conclusion 6 months from now or whatever, but for today, this is how it's working for me.
Yeah. And what about the decluttering, sentimental items that we are emotionally attached to? Have you came across that in your journey?
Yes, I think, my answer is going to be similar to what most people would say as the answer to this question. As far as a practical tip, if you're struggling with that and you feel like I have to get rid of this, but I want to maintain the memory, is take pictures, right? People say that. Take a digital picture, store it on a hard drive. You can access, the image and the memory whenever you like. And I think that is definitely practical. I mean, most of our pictures, most of our memories these days are from a digital camera or from our phones, so we are storing them digitally anyway. But, to me, honestly, if there's an object and it has significant, mental or emotional value for you, keep it. No one says you have to get rid of everything. Who's standing over you saying, no, you can't keep that doll from when you were 4 years old? That may have significant meaning to you, and that's what's important to you. I think the struggle would come into, if everything had emotional value like that, then you probably need to start asking yourself some deeper questions that I am probably not capable of helping with. And I don't mean like crazy or anything. I just mean like,
Yes.
there's some kind of an attachment to things there that may not be healthy. And so again, other than keep it or snap a picture, I don't have great advice outside of that. So.
Okay, can you share with us a couple of your favorite decluttering tips or techniques that are not too time consuming? Just a couple of them.
Sure. Well, when it comes to, you hear often about closets, the idea of if you're trying to declutter your closet, flip everything around backwards to where the hooks are facing the out way, and then just, over a month or 3 months or whatever, as you wear something, put it back on the normal way. Then at the end, it helps it doesn't really take any time other than flipping them, because you're already going to be putting your laundry back. And at the end of a few months, you're able to see, hey, I haven't worn this in 3 months or 6 months. I can get rid of that. I can give it to a friend. I can sell it. I can donate it. But I think that's true for most things. One of the things we've done that, is kind of a cheat is we will take some stuff, like with our children, with toys, we'll take half of their toys, put them in a tote or a bin, seal it up, put it in the garage, and leave it there for 6 months, so that we have half of the stuff that they're playing with that has to be cleaned up and decluttered. And then 6 months later, we pull it out and realize, hey, they never missed this object. Sometimes we'll just trade them out so that they're actually dealing with less, and it feels like, hey, I've got some new opportunity. But most often it helps us go, wow, we really didn't need that. And we're able to see, kind of what they do enjoy and what they're focusing on. That's true for office supplies, your desks. I mean, you can dump a drawer, in a box and then only go to that box when you actually need the object. And then after you use it, put it back in the drawer. I think that concept is one that takes almost no time initially and just spreads out over months as you begin to learn, what am I actually using? One of the things, I just thought of this because I just looked down at my glass here. Again, we have 8 people in our family, so that's a lot of dishes to wash. And we choose to wash them by hand and not use the dishwasher. So, we get everyone involved. So a few different times we've packed away all of our dishes other than 8 plates, 8 cups, and then everyone is involved. After they finish the meal, they go wash the plate and the cup themselves, and they put it away. That way it doesn't stack up. Those are a couple of little tools. I don't know if they're my favorite necessarily, but those are things that have been helpful to us.
Awesome. That's awesome. Let's end the call with maybe an inspiring quote from your book, Simpler.
Okay. Let's see. Let me. Can I read just a segment to you? Is that okay?
Sure. Sure.
And this is kind of how it opens. I talk about how this book is about progress, not perfection. It is feasible to think that you could simplify your life and live with focus. You do not have to be naturally organized to live simply. Every person, including you, can take steps today to declutter their life and begin to focus on what's most important to them. And I list some things that are going on in my life because actually there's a lot that goes on in my life that I kind of have to manage. And I say these things to emphasize a point. My life isn't always simple, but it is simpler than it used to be. And so I, from there, go into talking about, hey, I'm not shooting for some ideal, but I do believe that all of us can make progress in accomplishing the things that we're passionate about. So
that's a great message. It's all about the progress and making your life simpler every day.
Absolutely.
There is nothing like a simple life, but there is always a simpler life.
Sure.
So this is great. I highly recommend your book. It's awesome. And thank you very much for being with me on the call today.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.